Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Socratic Cinema Podcast. My name is Charlie Heatherly.
I'm Hallie Phillips.
I'm James DeLisio.
And my name's Casey Clark.
And this week, we watched Napoleon Dynamite.
Yeah, a personal favorite of mine. Napoleon Dynamite is movie made in the early 2000s.
2004.
2004, set in 1980s Idaho. It follows Napoleon Dynamite, an alienated, awkward high schooler, as he tries to navigate high school with his unlikely friends Pedro, a newly moved immigrant to the U.S., and Deb, an equally awkward girl who she's a photographer.
Yep.
Also affected by Napoleon's antics are his basement-dwelling older brother Kip, as he pursues romance online, and his uncle Rico, who is still stuck in his glory days from high school. And that's pretty much all there is to know about the movie.
Yeah, I mean, for background, I think that's a fairly good synopsis. Now, out of the four people we have here, I'm going to spoil it right now. I'm the only one that was not the biggest fan of this movie.
Speaking of which, should we go around and just give a quick, overall our feelings about the movie?
I think that could be good. Casey, do you want to start?
Sure, I'd love to start. I've seen Napoleon Dynamite maybe 3 times, and each time, I really like it. It's just, for me, it's that well-rounded, cult classic where it's kind of, completely unintelligible, and you can't really understand it on the first watch, but then you have to learn to enjoy it. You have to get past the fact that it's honestly not the greatest story and the characters may not be the most likable, but the content and I feel like the journey that they go on are probably the most entertaining parts.
I can agree with that. I really liked this movie just from the beginning because it just has this raw reality pretense to it, and I just love how it's so weird like that. It's so raw and original that you don't know what's gonna happen next, but you can sympathize with what's happening. You know these people if you think about it. You know each of these characters. You know probably what they're going through, but it's just that sense of originality and rawness that I really appreciated from the film.
Right, Charlie.
Napoleon Dynamite. Oh, Casey's died. Napoleon Dynamite is a good movie, but I don't like it. And that's different to Aladdin in the previous episode of our podcast, which you should go and watch right now. There should be a link in the top corner. Shameless self-promotion. We did Aladdin in our first podcast, and that was a bad movie that I didn't like because it was bad. This is a good movie that I don't like because I don't find the comedy that funny. Okay, fine. Maybe I am a little bit particular with what I laugh at, but I found the character of Napoleon Dynamite to be unlikable, and I don't really see why there's any reason I should root for him. I did see him described as an anti-hero, which I think is a perfect description of him and his role in the narrative. I found a lot of the jokes to be funny simply because they were random. I did laugh at a bunch of the jokes, though. I think the entire arc with the vote for Pedro thing is incredibly funny. There was a particular scene where there was a kid being bullied, and then Napoleon goes up to the kid and says, "Pedro offers you his protection." And then you cut to a scene where the kid's bicycle's being stolen, and 2 of Pedro's... Oh, were they brothers or cousins?
Cousins.
Two of Pedro's cousins show up and scare the bully off. And things like that. It has this quirky sort of charm to the movie, but it just didn't click with me because I just didn't find the humor too funny.
Okay. So I have a lot of ties with Napoleon Dynamite. It's kind of been my family's movie for as long as I can remember, right? There are countless quotes from this movie that just get thrown around my family. You know, get your own tots, things like that. But this movie, I haven't seen it in a long time, but watching it the other night, I just appreciated it so much more. I loved how quirky and weird and awkward it was. It wasn't afraid of just being the weird movie that it was. It was it was like not ashamed to be a very cringeworthy movie. I think it's hilarious. There were so many times where I, audibly laughed, which doesn't happen very much.
Mm-hmm.
And I found a lot of the characters to be. I liked a lot of the characters because they were so. They're real archetypes, but cranked up to 11, right? Everyone knows a Napoleon and everyone knows a Pedro, like Hallie was saying. So that just sort of...
I definitely think that the movie revels in its awkwardness, as you said, and I think that the cringe humor works in some cases. Like, I was just introduced to an after-credit scene that I didn't know existed, and I thought that was very funny, but what didn't work for me is the fact that everybody in the movie, save for the bullies, are just super strange people, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just the fact that nobody calls them out on it. There's no straight man, which for me is something that I think is sort of necessary in a movie with such ridiculous characters. You need to ground it somehow in reality, because what's funny about comedy in some situations, I forgot who said this, is that it's the unexpected happening in an expected world. But when you create an unexpected world and make unexpected things happen in it, you don't have that dissonance that creates humor from it.
I think I would disagree in that, like, there's characters like Summer and Trisha and the other jocks and prep kids who do kind of serve as the grounding, right? You get scenes where Napoleon sends Trisha the admittedly, pretty poor Uncanny Valley kind of drawing of her in as his sort of promposal. And she is not pleased. Like, she looks visibly uncomfortable and confused by it. And I think scenes like that do sort of ground it, like remind you that there are people in this world who are relatively normal still, right? So it's not like everyone's not Napoleon.
That's a good point. My problem with the Trisha thing, though, is that she is forced to go to the prom with him. And when I was watching that, I cringed so hard. And I don't like using that word because of the negative connotations it has. I mean it like... that's the comedy this movie's trying to go to, is cringe comedy, right? So when I say that, I don't want to add any extra baggage. But it just made me cringe, because I don't like seeing people go through such a, awkward situation like that when they themselves are probably nice people. I mean, Trish did nothing wrong, I remember.
She kind of deserted Napoleon when she was at the dance. I
mean, but she didn't want to go to the dance with him in the first place.
Her mom convinced her.
Convinced or forced, but
Mm-hmm.
But I think the biggest thing for me in this movie was, or one of the biggest things that I loved about it was how they used cinematography to set up the tone.
Yes.
So I feel like that's a good place to sort of dive in with talking about it. There's only one scene in the movie I can think of that used any sort of camera movement, and that was, I believe, when Napoleon is watching Pedro go over the jump on his bike, and it does this crazy dolly zoom in on Napoleon.
Mm-hmm.
And other than that, I think the entire movie is pretty much static shots. Unmoving.
There's some later on in the movie, but you're right. It's lots of static shots.
Just wide shot, very, very non-rule of thirds. Almost kind of Wes Anderson-y, but in an awkward
I got that
kind
feeling
of way.
too. Yeah.
Which I appreciate, because it didn't add any extra emotion to the scenes. I feel like they were trying to reveal a lot of reality and like what they were trying to explain in the cringe. So adding any movement, I feel like would have added extra emotion and appeal. So I'm glad they didn't.
Yeah. I think by having it be unmoving, it added to the raw, awkward. It was very raw.
Yes.
And the fact that every shot just kind of lingered for a little bit longer than it needed to, like there would always be a second or two of silence.
Yes.
After a line of dialogue was finished, added to the kind of almost
originality.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. You can almost see stuff like that in The Office, where there's just a lot of awkward silence. And that whole sort of genre of awkward humor, I think, Napoleon Dynamite is a big contributor to that.
Yeah, like the genius of that movie does come from those little pauses, like those little things that you don't necessarily recognize that sort of build up to this amazing palette they've created. I mean, everything from the set design, costuming, color palette throughout the entire movie. I was very impressed with it.
Astounding.
Yeah.
As you guys were saying, the cinematography was really good. All of it plays into this central idea they're sort of cultivating, and I really, really, really appreciate that. And it takes a lot of care and effort for someone to put that much thought into every single aspect of it.
Mm-hmm.
But Hallie, I know that you do directing. You're a famous director with Reese Witherspoon.
Yes.
Could
yes,
you-
Thank you.
She is.
Is there any insight that you can give us into maybe why they specifically chose a certain color palette or camera shots or anything like that?
Well, they were trying to set it back in the 1980s, so I really appreciate, like, they kept the houses original, the nice wood paneling. The orange and the blue contrast was kind of like a good thing, because that's something you kind of see in, like, what is it, like modern, postmodern architecture.
Mm-hmm.
So I really like those moments where it's just like blue and orange, or you're in the bowling alley and it's just like that blue overlight of everything. But I think what they were trying to get at was the blandness of their life in Idaho, because it's still like a pastel palette that they were using. Like, you would see yellow and orange and pink, but it would be very like opaqued.
Subdued,
almost.
yeah.
Subdued. So I think that's what they were trying to do with that.
Yeah, I really liked the color palette and all of that.
And then Casey, I know that you are a dancer. Could you give us? Could you give us a critique on Napoleon's dancing skills?
Oh,
Ooh, I'm excited for this.
that
Part of the movie.
scene.
Alright. Musicality, 10 out of 10. Style, 10 out of 10.
Mm-hmm.
Costume design, 10 out of 10. Did you see the confidence, like, in those snow boots?
Yes.
Like, it was amazing. I personally, I feel like they really needed to carry on that, like, awkwardness, and just, like, I feel like his success in the dance scenes and the reaction to him basically, like, hitting the Squidward, like, swivel up the body, like, the reaction from the school being that complete nobody is just, like, crazy, and it definitely feeds into the the theme that this is not, like, in tune with reality at all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the whole the vote for Pedro dancing scene kind of acts as, like, it's definitely the climax of the movie, I think.
Oh, for sure.
It's sort of like the zenith for all the themes, I think, of the movie. Like, it's sort of the height of Napoleon's sort of unfailing truthfulness to himself, right? Like, Napoleon never compromises for anybody, right? He's not he's not afraid to well, even if he was afraid, it sort of is the biggest, I think, portrayal of Napoleon's just unabashed self-expression, right? He gets out there and does these crazy moves that are, like, as cool as they are seeing it, you know, pulled off in time with the music and everything, as cool as it is watching that, I think if any of us saw someone doing that in real life at a school dance, we'd think he was weird.
I also think an interesting point to the self-expression is, and I sort of disagree with it in a way, is that he's a deeply insecure person.
Mm-hmm.
Deeply insecure. He makes up lies all the time about his, was it werewolf or badger hunting? Or werewolf. Wolverine. I'm getting all my furry animals confused. He went on a quote-unquote Wolverine hunting trip with his uncle and killed 50 Wolverine, which is obviously not true. And a lot of these stories that he crafts throughout the movie are just blatant lies, and they're done to gain popularity, but at the same time, he doesn't seem to care too much about having popularity.
Right. I think one of the biggest themes of the movie throughout is sort of like, how do I put it eloquently? It's sort of, yeah, like staying true to yourself, like self-acceptance and self-expression, right? I mean, it's never, well, despite the fact that Pedro's running for, you know, class president, which is somewhat of a popularity contest, it's never the Napoleon and Deb and Pedro. Their goal is never to be popular. Their goal is just to be themselves and kind of figure out, you know, just kind of carry on, right?
And also playing into the self-acceptance, Uncle Rico.
Uncle Rico.
Every single line of dialogue is him referring back to 82. If only they put him in the state championship.
Right,
Oh,
I think
yes.
Uncle Rico's like almost a foil to Napoleon, in that whereas Napoleon is completely unafraid of being himself with all his weird and eccentric hobbies, Uncle Rico is very much stuck trying to be this suave ladies' man, and he's also, like you were saying, stuck in the past of his, high school glory days.
Mm-hmm.
He's kind of the complete contrast, where Napoleon is completely, I think it's safe to say Napoleon is pretty in tune with what he believes, right? He's not afraid to say what he believes. Uncle Rico is very much stuck in the past. He can't come to terms with his current reality, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Well, and then that's an interesting point, is that Uncle Rico is stuck in the past, but a lot of the main characters we see are moving towards the future.
I actually, I wrote about that too.
We see that Deb is a photographer, and obviously the cameras that she's using are sort of new age technology. And then Kip, I got the name right?
Yes.
Kip is, he basically finds the love of his life on a, chat website, a chat room that he goes to every 2 hours. So you see that sort of... Yeah.
La Fuanda.
La Fuanda. Which I saw spelled L-A... Wait, no.
There's a space in it.
There's a space in
She
it.
pronounces it La Fonda,
like
but then...
Wanda.
Wanda.
Which is
Okay.
weird, yeah.
Really strange.
But I think it also just adds to the obscurity of everything.
Yeah.
Back on Kip, yeah, I think a big, motif in the movie was the sort of, almost how gullible people were to technology, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because technology was such a new thing in the 80s. It was sort of this optimism for technology and what it could do, but at the same time just how gullible people were with it. Kip's
Time
Kip
machine.
buying the time machine, which plays back into Uncle Rico, trying to go back to his glory days.
Yeah.
Right? They buy a time machine on a sketchy website and they end up,
busting their balls.
Yeah, electrifying themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Kip finding love in a chat room, and in the post-credit scene, in his song to La Fuanda, I mean, one of the main lines is, I love technology, right?
Yeah.
And then he said, not as much as you, but I still love technology.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was a really interesting motif, I guess, throughout the movie.
And I think the movie does cultivate a lot of its motifs well. One of my favorite scenes, and I think one that we should definitely dive into, is the very first one, and that first sort of sequence where we are getting introduced to Napoleon, and we'll talk about the opening credits as well, because I really like the opening credits.
Yes.
But we see Napoleon, and we're set up with this color palette. We see his house. I forgot exactly what colors they were, but they were pastel-ish, bright. It sort of set the tone for the entire movie. And then you see him get on a bus with a bunch of 6th graders, and he obviously looks very, very out of place. And then you see him pull out a toy action figure with a little bit of string attached to it, and he throws it out the bus window and just watches as it sort of bumps over the ground as the bus moves forward. And it sets up Napoleon as this guy who's out of place, even in people that would be more closer to his personality. He's a child, almost.
Yeah.
But he's more childish than a lot of the children.
But I think it's important to point out in his dialogue and the fact that he's kind of unashamed of what he's doing. I mean, what is it? The kid that he's sitting next to asks him, he says, what are you going to do today, Napoleon? And his first line in the movie is, whatever I feel like. Gosh.
Yeah.
Right?
It's like an annoying toddler.
No matter how out of touch he is, Napoleon's going to do his own thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And no one can stop him. So I think he is sort of this... I was looking at someone else's analysis of the movie as well, to sort of, while I was cultivating my thoughts. And I think I agree with him. Napoleon acts as this symbol of honesty and self-expression throughout the whole movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the movie's not so much about Napoleon's growth as it is how Napoleon's honesty and self-expression affects everyone else.
There's not character arcs in this movie to an extent that you would find in more traditional ones, especially with the sort of vignette style it's going with. A lot of the time there's not necessarily a coherent through line in the story. It's more of an overarching thing, where the first half of the movie is dedicated to the prom, and then the second half is dedicated to the election.
Mm-hmm.
Right, it's like 2 movies put into one.
Yeah, almost like a little anthology.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting to see how Napoleon's character goes through that, because he doesn't really change necessarily through any of it. But, I mean, as you were saying, he does become more accepting of himself. And I think there's a very big contrast between that, like the final dance scene, and him in the beginning of the movie, where he's telling all these lies, he's trying to look cool, and then he just decides, you know what, I'm just gonna be myself on stage, and I'm just gonna dance to the beat, you know? I'm gonna get jiggy with it.
Right.
As the cool kids would say.
And I think another character growth point for Napoleon is at first his kind of him expressing himself is almost the same thing as him kind of pushing everyone else away, right? Like him pushing away the kid he was sitting next to on the bus, or him shooing away Deb when she first comes to his door, right? He pretty much shuts her down completely. Things like that. Whereas at the end of the movie, we see he's sort of come to let others in a little bit, right? From the final scene with Napoleon and Deb playing, I don't know what it's called.
Tetherball.
Mm-hmm. I thought that was a really sweet, just like the way it was shot and the music in the background. I just thought that scene was really sweet.
Right, because throughout the whole movie, no one would play with him.
Right, everyone hates Napoleon, and Napoleon kind of pushes everyone away. But throughout the movie, you see him slowly start to let people in, right? Like with Deb, he starts giving her compliments in his own weird Napoleon way. Like even in the end credit scene where he's like, "Oh, Deb, can you take a picture of me on the horse?" Right? He's not afraid to let other people into his life anymore, which is another, I think, almost character growth point for Napoleon.
And I think he's the only character that experiences growth, really.
I'd say Deb does.
Yeah, no, Deb does to a certain extent, but I mean, drastic, like, learned a lesson. Napoleon seems to be the only one.
Right, yeah. Kip, funny as it is, you would think Kip would be the one who would learn maybe a lesson about how technology can't be trusted. Maybe LaFonda is a catfish or something.
I thought
but,
that, yeah.
But everything works out for Kip in a weird way.
Well, didn't he say in the beginning that his girlfriend had blonde hair? Right? When he was talking to Rico?
Yes, he did.
And then...
Wait, what?
That's why I thought LaFonda wasn't real at first.
Wait, so then she catfished him...
But he still loved her.
But she was still an attractive girl, so it's like a... It's not the worst catfish. I've had worse before.
No.
Of course.
Yeah,
Right.
but just the whole Kip and LaFonda scenario is so funny to me and how bizarre it is. It's this complete contrast between awkward, pasty, nerdy Kip and LaFonda, who's so not. But everything works out for them, and it's really weird and kind of sweet.
Right, because you keep expecting something to happen where it all's going to fall apart, but it never does.
Yeah,
And what message does that send? That it all worked out?
I don't know, but it was heartwarming nonetheless to me.
I don't know. I was not the biggest fan of any of the characters in the film, so when all of the romantic subplots got tied up, I didn't like any of them that much, especially Rico's. And I'm not sure if I mentioned that here or off
I think that was off.
But I really dislike how Rico got back together with his ex, or just a random girl on a bicycle that came on by. He didn't deserve that quote-unquote victory of finding love, because he was not a good person.
No, I think it's safe to say that of everyone in the movie, Rico is the antagonist. I think it's safe to say that Rico is the bad guy, or at least the opposing force to Napoleon.
Or Summer. Maybe both of them.
I think it kind of switches between the overarching arcs.
Maybe Summer is more the bad guy for Pedro, because she's running against him.
This is true. What'd you guys think about Pedro? I'm interested.
I say props to his actor. I mean,
yeah.
Yeah.
That was quite the delivery.
Oh yeah, can we say that all the actors in this movie were fantastic?
Amazing.
I mean, it takes
Oh, yeah.
serious
they
skill.
did that.
They did really well on selling their characters. Pedro, I think, could someone explain to me exactly what the whole he had to shave his hair off because he was so nervous thing was, because
yeah.
that just seems
was
super out of
hot.
left field.
He was just
And
hot.
he had to
He was
shave
hot,
his
so he
hair.
shaved his
He was-
head.
So the reason isn't that he was nervous, it was that he was hot?
No, he was nervous,
Yeah.
so he became so hot.
So
Because-
that seems like a serious medical
It's
condition. though, to
it's
the
a
point-
Pedro. I think
I was concerned.
Pedro's big thing is it's like knee-jerk reactions. He's hot, shave his head, right?
Yeah.
He sees a poster about class
Oh,
elections.
that's
I'm
good.
running for president.
That's a good insight.
I think Pedro is almost like, I think the reason Pedro and Napoleon get along so well is they're both so spontaneous, and
Yeah.
it's like the
And
I think
impulsive.
And
impulsive,
tater
yeah.
tots.
I think they're like the intrusive things that we think but we'd never do, right? I think
Mm-hmm.
we've all felt so hot that we want to shave our head, but we won't, right? Clearly we won't. There's too much stigma.
Yeah, they don't have any inhibition, and that's a great point that you're making. Is that, like, especially in the very beginning of the movie where Pedro just looks at a girl and is like, okay, well, I'm going to make a cake for her, and I'm going to propose to her.
Yeah, exactly.
And then he also doesn't feel bad when he's let down, which I think is another interesting point. And the movie is also at its core a movie about relationships
Mhm.
that we have
Yeah.
both with romantic partners and brothers and grandmothers that nearly get killed in dune buggy accidents.
Strange
yeah.
uncles.
Yeah, and estranged uncles, and how those relationships can both prosper and deteriorate based on the people in them.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like,
Mm.
between Uncle Rico and Napoleon, that's a horrible, horrible relationship, because Uncle Rico is feeding off of Napoleon for... I mean, he takes He takes Napoleon's friends and uses them as pawns in his, like, money triangle or pyramid scheme that he's doing.
Money triangle.
Money triangle, that's... I'm not good with words right now, okay? But, so... A lot of the relationships in the movie don't necessarily evolve, though, in the way that you would think. Any
Right.
relationship connected to Napoleon only really evolves because of Napoleon. Because the main conflict between Deb and Napoleon is someone else's doing.
Is Rico's doing.
Is Rico's
Which
doing.
sort of reinforces, I guess, my thinking that Rico's the antagonist at the end of the day. He breaks down their relationship, and now it's up to Napoleon to build it back up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say that the movie really drives home the absurdity with the fact that the instigating incident that Rico does is selling Deb breast enhancement hormones.
that
I
scene?
can't believe that this movie exists.
I just
No.
wrote in my notes for that classic weird uncle because I
Yeah,
didn't even know
Rico's
what to say
he's
about
the
it.
sketchy uncle.
he is the sketchy uncle. He's the epitome of the sketchy uncle.
Yeah, at that part, I said Rico gives, in all caps, teens breast enhancement papers, and they laugh it off, which I thought was also an inappropriate reaction to that. If I was one of them, I would immediately slap Rico and possibly beat him up.
Well, Rex beats him up.
Rex beats... Oh, that was so
yeah.
good. Rex
Rex.
is my favorite character, by far. I think Rex is
Oh,
the funniest character in the entire movie, and I'm sort of sad he wasn't used more.
Yeah, I Rex was great. I mean, the whole Rex Kwando dojo scene is it's classic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so Rex only comes back in when we realize that Uncle Rico is trying to deal with that one lady, right? Who happens to be
Trish-
Rex.
What did he call? What's her name? Starla.
Starla.
How did you remember that?
You're crazy.
I'm telling you, this movie is my life.
You've internalized it.
I
at this
have.
point.
No. The quote lines of dialogue from this movie are just part of my family's vocabulary at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And maybe there's something interesting to pick into there. What makes those lines funny to you?
I think it's how. I mean, my family is big on mean humor.
Yeah.
I mean, we're all kind of jerks to each other.
Mhm.
But like and it's just how weird it is. I mean, like the whole get your own tots is a big one for us. Rex Kwando, gosh, there's just so many lines. Tina, you fat lard. Things
Yeah.
like things like that you can just they roll off the tongue.
They roll off the
Because
tongue.
they're real enough where you can say them without feeling too weird about it. Like, you can't...
Mhm.
You don't have to try too hard because the dialogue already feels pretty... It's pretty down to earth already.
Yeah, I would say for high school adventure comedy films, this one is definitely one that you can watch as a family, which is not very common, because a lot of them are usually about like sexual exploits that the people are going on. This one is entirely based on the characters and very family-friendly ideas. And I think that's an interesting take on high school, because a lot of it is all about breaking the rules, and, you know, we got to carve our own path in, and then you see Napoleon and these guys, and they're just having fun with what they're given.
Yeah, they're trying to run for class president. Like, that's such a by-the-books sort of...
But they make it original enough that you can watch it and be surprised by it. Like, it's
Yeah.
not like the High School Musical version.
No, yeah, I mean, by the books as in they're not being bad kids. By the books as in, like, this is a completely normal thing for high schoolers to be doing.
Exactly. And, I don't really know what I'm about to talk about here, but we're going to find something. Oh, yeah, can we go back to the opening credits where...
Yes.
Oh, yes.
That was one of my favorite parts of the movie, because that also sets up the style really, really well.
Yeah.
Where it also brings in the theme of food, which is something else I want to talk about. Where food is being constantly portrayed in the movie. It starts with this opening credit sequence where it sort of shows the main dishes that are going to be served. And the two ones that always come to mind for me are the steak that Uncle Rico eats.
Yes.
And the tater tots.
Yeah, those were the two I was going to talk about.
And I think that both of those represent different character traits and sort of ideas that those characters are trying to sell.
Oh, my interpretation of it was each meal or item that they show is to a different character. That the steak is for Rico, the school lunch with the tots is for, I thought that would be for Pedro, because he's the one that you always see eating the lunch. Napoleon just tries to leech off of it.
Yeah. Like the good man he is.
Yeah, and Napoleon, I mean, obviously, you see his wallet. Like, they go through his wallet in the opening credits, so, you know, kind of easy to assign there. But... What did you guys think about the opening credits overall?
I thought they really set up the weird pretense well, but it's interesting you guys think that the food represents something. I'm interested in what you guys thought about the yolk and the eggs.
Oh, gross.
The farmers.
No,
Hey,
don't even talk to me
Wait,
about
are we
that.
talking about
The scene.
Oh man.
The scene where he just straight up drinks the eggs.
I want to know what you guys derived
I
from
heard
that.
someone
Pain.
I've heard that another movie the guy who made this movie also made Nacho Libre, and I guess eggs is just drinking eggs is a recurring thing for him. Because there's a scene in Nacho Libre where
Egg fetish.
where he cracks open
Thank you,
yes,
Casey.
yes, Casey. Where he cracks open an egg and drinks it as like a symbol of power or something. And I guess eggs almost, oh man, I'm gonna feel like such a wannabe such a wannabe academic making this connection here, but eggs are almost like a symbol of like confidence and power, right? Think about Rocky Balboa.
Oh, I see.
He drinks raw eggs before he goes out and does his crazy workout buff guy stuff. Nacho Libre, same director as Napoleon Dynamite. He drinks the egg in order to try and become like this crazy mythical wrestler.
Yeah.
And I think if you look closely, this is also, I'm not gonna take credit for this. This is also something that I saw discussed in other analyses of the movie. In the scenes after Napoleon drinks the eggs, that's where we start to see him become more confident, right? The dance scene and things like that. The eggs are his crossing the threshold.
And going back to the other ones, I think that's a great analysis on the eggs. I never thought that sentence would be spoken, Gary.
Oh, yeah.
But for me, the steak and the tater tots represent sort of dueling ideas of what it means to live in your own skin. Like, for Rico, the steak is... I mean, steak's traditionally a sign of wealth, especially if you're getting a good steak, and masculinity and power and things like that. And Rico is trying to live up to this standard of like, he's the machoist, he's like the, football star, he's so cool, and for him that steak is reinforcing that idea. And the tater tots are, I'm going to be real with you, a pretty geeky food to be eating.
Yeah.
Like, if anyone's eating tater tots, you got to have some self-confidence to do that. Or maybe that's just me, I don't know. But the tater tots represent almost Napoleon and Pedro's unabashed insistence on being themselves.
Yeah.
It's like, because they don't care, what other people think. Except Napoleon does sometimes, which is another weird thing I don't like about his character. But food for me in that movie is a great way to view it through.
Yeah.
Almost.
I also think there's something interesting to be said about the relationship between Rico and Kip. They're both sort of striving for the same thing. They both want to be this macho man. But it's clearly this they're both failing, but in drastically different ways.
Yeah.
Whereas like Rico, I think is I mean he's going overboard, right? And he's ends up making people uncomfortable with how forwardly masculine he's being. Whereas Kip is kind of a beta. Forgive me. Kip is kind of a beta, but in his own mind he thinks he's this suave ladies man. But I just thought that was I don't really have much to say on that. I just thought it was an interesting thing how you could almost argue that Kip and Rico are kind of like not foils, but like, well, almost foils.
I think it's more so they're actually foils. Like they're viewing the same idea through two different lenses.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I really like it when movies do that, where they have one theme and they look at it from a variety of angles, and then you're left to make your own interpretations about it. And then the question is Napoleon, does he choose to live up to this standard of masculinity that he sets for himself, or does he choose to go against it at the end of the film?
That's an interesting...
Well, because then you have to compare the end of the film to the end credit scene.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think they're very different, right? The end of the film is sort of like Napoleon himself has gained the affection of Deb, and now they're this kind of innocent puppy love, sort of awkward romance going on. And then in the end... Casey, did you see the end credit scene?
I did.
Thank you.
And...
Thank you.
So what did you think about that, Casey? Did you think that it added anything to the film to have that?
I think it, like, as James was saying, like, it is an interesting contrast, because you wouldn't think, like, I think it gives kind of more into everyone's characters, just, like, a little bit, but at the end of it, I don't think it added anything. I think it was just like a fun scene.
Yeah, it does give you your straight man.
It gives me my... And I really liked that scene.
Oh, that's... Yeah.
But, and this is a twisty doodle that I'm about to do, I don't think they should have had it. I think that they shouldn't have included it because it undercuts Napoleon's dance scene at the end. Because my answer to the question I asked just a couple minutes ago was that Napoleon rejects the masculinity he's been trying to accept, but then in that after credits scene, he sort of re-accepts it as something that he wants to do.
You could almost argue that by being himself, he's sort of achieved true masculinity, maybe.
Good, yeah.
Right?
That is 100 masculinity.
He's very nonchalant about it. He's just like, oh, sorry, I was late. I was just doing my thing, taming wild horses. Right? Like, that seems like something that Napoleon would say.
But then he
He's
asked Deb
still
to
lying.
take a picture of it, too.
Yeah.
So then you have to play that into
Yeah.
it.
I think the picture's what sells it for me, on that he's sort of gone back to this childish ideal of it. I don't know. I think identity is another major theme in the entire movie. And by having that end credit scene, it just sort of undercuts the change they're trying to make.
I think, honestly, I treat it as separate from the rest of the movie.
That's
I don't
fair.
I don't think it's meant to be read too much into. But I mean, obviously you can, and there's going to be stuff to find about it. I sort of treat it in a separate bubble as just like a fun epilogue, right? Like, here's what's happened to Kip, more antics, like a happy ending. But I think it was an end credit scene for a reason, right? Because you don't need... The movie's still whole without it. Yeah.
And then, one of the last things that I really have to talk about in any detail is this one scene where I believe his name is Lyle. He's the farmer with the egg juice that I really don't like.
It's called a yolk.
The egg juice is the professional term, James. But, so there's this scene where Lyle is outside with a... I'm not even sure what type of gun it is. It's like a shotgun or rifle.
It's a shotgun.
And there's a cow, and he decides to put the cow down, but a bus of children drives in front of the view of the camera, which we see from Napoleon's perspective. And he shoots the cow, and all the children inside the bus go, ah! And I'm wondering, do you guys think that scene contributes anything to an idea of losing your childhood that can be seen in the rest of the movie.
I think that's an interesting observation, but honestly, I didn't. Like when I was watching that movie, I didn't really dwell on that scene too much. But I think if there was, I mean, man, I'm not really. I guess I'm unprepared. I feel like if you could find more like instances of that, then I think the cow scene would be a great way of like tying in that whole loss of innocence theme. But I think it's kind of weird because Napoleon the whole time is so obliviously innocent in like a childlike kind of way.
Yeah.
Innocent as in he still plays with action figures and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's a really good observation you made.
I think it contributes to how like Napoleon was just like thrown into this kind of raw and insane world, like the city in Idaho. I think it just played into that basically, and how, you know, weird and kind of violent this place he is. It's kind of like a separate place and from what we're used to, but it's a place we all know of, kind of.
Yeah.
Like, it just shows the rawness of it. That's what I got. I got, like, these children are living up to grow up like Napoleon. This is what he lived up in.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Oh, well, then that's interesting.
I would,
Here, go ahead, Casey. Go ahead.
I would agree with Hallie on that. Like, in that scene, I think when I originally watched it, I thought it was just oh, this is a quirky scene. All these children just saw a cow get murdered. But I think now, once you say that there's this possible connection to, like, the death of innocence, in a sense, I feel like that is, like, throughout the movie, I feel like that's one of the points where we get a stark connection or, like, jolting back to reality, because everyone in the movie's living in this kind of delusion, like, as we aforementioned, like, Rico is in this delusion of his glory days, Kip is in this delusion that he's suave, and Napoleon's in this delusion. I feel like Napoleon's kind of caught in two types of illusions. Like, he's as we said, he wants to be masculine, but also he wants to be himself. So he's kind of trapped in two places. And I feel like while all this craziness is happening within this, like, the A plot, like, we get these little, like, B plot scenes where it's like, oh, this town is actually crazy, in case you haven't like noticed it. And I feel like that's just really interesting.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very good point, because I mean, we see that Napoleon's family, all of them are absolutely crazy. And it begs the question, what type of environment do you have to be raised up in to be, like, so consistently? Because Napoleon's is off, his brother's off, his uncle's off, so what is causing all of this turmoil in these characters to be so strange?
I think it's they're trying to ignore the reality they're living in. Like, they're trying so hard to ignore the flaws in what they're living in and how bland and unhappy they are with their situations, that they just turn to imagination and daydreams and dwelling on the past to ignore what their conditions are.
Yeah, which I think is a really interesting point, seeing that their grandmother, who I guess is presumed that she raised them, is probably the only normal person in the Dynamite family.
Yeah.
She is almost like obviously she's still a little
she's still a little off. Yeah.
But she's almost the straight man trying to pull him back in. Right? When Napoleon's making a scene about, well, what are they gonna eat while she goes out of town? She's like, shut up, Napoleon. Like, make some food. I don't know.
Make a quesadilla.
Yeah, make yourself a damn quesadilla.
Oh, when she said quesadilla, I was like, ugh.
That's another one we say a lot.
Quesadilla.
When someone's hungry, mom says, make yourself a dang quesadilla. Like, it's just part of our culture.
And I'm sort of, again, I feel like some of my favorite characters were just, like, killed off almost in the movie, because I liked the grandma. And then she doesn't really appear throughout much of the movie. So it begs the question, why was she there in the first place? What was her role?
I think she's a straight man. Because even in the wedding scene at the end, she's rolling her eyes at the whole thing.
But how effective is a straight man if you only have it for a small portion of the entire movie?
That's a fair point. Not sure.
Because they could have just brought Uncle Rico in the very beginning. as this guy that Napoleon already
but then
doesn't
he wouldn't
like.
be the intruder that Napoleon sees him as.
Right, because I think that's a big
Mhm.
part of his character. Is he came out of nowhere and just started messing things up.
Mm-hmm. They seem to have some sort of former connection though, so like they know each other.
Oh yeah,
already.
I think they've met before, but never in like a long-term setting. Maybe, I don't know.
That's fair. No, that's fair. Yeah, so I would think, just to sum up a lot of what we've been saying, Napoleon Dynamite is a film about family, connections, and unabashed acceptance of your own personality. And in some cases, that can cause delusion, where you're going to do something that society would deem unacceptable, which is another major theme is social constructs and why are we following these specific things. And really, what does it mean to be weird? Is Napoleon weird if everyone else is as well?
Oh.
That's a good question.
Like,
Wow.
so then what does it mean to be weird? What does it mean to be strange? Are we really watching a strange movie? Why did I think it was a weird movie? Now I'm questioning myself. Maybe I liked the movie the entire time. Maybe I'm the weird one.
Wow.
And what makes inherent normality a thing? Like, why do I think it's more... Why do I think that I need a straight man? Like, is the presence of someone who I would deem more socially acceptable a funny addition to these people that I deem less socially acceptable?
Or is it some sense of like relief? Like
Yeah, some sense of relief, right? Maybe this movie is a clap back. I like the sound effects I'm doing now. A clap back at social constructs, really.
yeah.
And showing that being weird is normal. Go ahead, Casey.
Yeah. I feel like as people, we want everything to make sense in a way. So I feel like when a movie like Napoleon Dynamite comes along and nothing makes sense, but in the movie everything makes sense, like it's a really, I feel like it is like a social commentary of what truly is weird, because at the bare bones of all these characters, like we've already established that they're like level 100 of whatever like stereotype that they are. Like if we brought them down to level 1, like they're still like Napoleon's still this awkward high school kid looking for his identity. Deb is also this awkward high school girl dealing with just guys that she likes with weird estranged uncles. And it's just these characters, if you take away all of their eclectic and eccentric features, they're actually normal people. So I do feel like it's a social commentary of if you add things that aren't necessarily socially acceptable in a movie where that is a socially acceptable climate, like I feel like it really gives us something to think about.
I think that's a fantastic place to let the viewers think about that themselves. I think we very thoroughly analyzed Napoleon Dynamite.
We did.
I'm gonna be honest. My opinions about the movie have changed. I think I can go.
Him.
I think I can go back and enjoy the movie much more than I did the first time. Because the first time, I mean, like Casey said, it's a weird movie. I was expecting to find, all these common themes and ideas and writing characteristics, but you're not going to find that in Napoleon Dynamite. It's a weird movie about weird people doing weird things, and it's going to leave you to question, is that even weird? What's acceptable? Who are we as people, and how can we better be ourselves?
Yeah, it's something that you have to watch more than once.
It's something you got to watch more than once. And with that, unless anyone has something else to say?
Closing remarks?
Anyone?
That's it.
This has been another episode of Socratic
Socratic
Cinema.
Cinema.